Welcome to our live webinar titled Living with Aplastic Anemia, a Patient Panel. Thank you for joining us. My name is Alice Hauk, Senior Director of Patient and Health Professional Programs at AAMD-SIF, and I will be moderating the presentation today. As we get started, we recognize the generosity of our corporate sponsors and the generous support of patients, families, and caregivers for supporting the webinar today. Due to the high volume of teleconferences on the internet, it is possible you may lose your connections during the webinar. If you are unable to view the webinar online, you can call in to hear the audio portion of the program using the call-in number in your reminder email. Today's program will be archived to our website within a few business days. You will be notified by email when it is live and ready for viewing. There is no formal presentation for this webinar. Our webinar today is an interactive session for you to ask your questions and learn from the experiences of other aplastic anemia patients. Please feel free to submit questions at any time. To submit a question or comment, open the Q&A window on the lower part of your screen, type your question in the small text box window, and when you have finished typing your question, hit enter. We will do our best to get to all questions. When asking questions, I respectfully ask that you do two things to help us manage incoming questions. First, submit your entire question all at the same time. And second, our panelists today are not medical professionals, so they will not be providing medical advice, but sharing their own experiences living with aplastic anemia. Our panelists today are Ashley Brown and Mario Rivera. Welcome, Ashley and Mario. Please tell us about yourselves. Ashley, would you like to start?
Yes, sure. My name is Ashley. I live in Florida. I am still in my first year of dealing with the disease. I was diagnosed in the summer. So I'm still trucking it on through, and I'm glad to be here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mario Rivera. I was diagnosed in 2007 with severe aplastic anemia. Have been treated at NIH currently, part re-enrolled in a clinical trial, and my body responded well to a horse ATG treatment I received. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you both. Ashley, could you tell us about your initial diagnosis and how you explained it to family and friends when you did receive the diagnosis?
Yeah, sure. So I probably did not do it the right way, but it was my way. When I first started going to the hospital and they were not sure, and they were saying that it could be leukemia, I wasn't sure I wanted to let my family know until I was sure if it was cancer or not. So I actually did not tell anybody the whole time until it was confirmed that I had aplastic anemia. It was about 2 or 3 weeks in from my initial ER visit to me actually getting my bone marrow results back. That I actually told anybody. So I literally did everything by myself. I went to the hospital, the first time the ER by myself. I was talking to doctors by myself. I never let my family know until I was sure. And that was just from me being afraid and scared. If I could go back, I definitely would have let my parents know ahead of time. I would have let my family know beforehand.
Thank you. Mario, how about you?
Yeah, similar story. So initially, the diagnosis wasn't clear. And like Ashley was alluding to, there were talks of it being possibly ITP, leukemia. Wasn't clearly diagnosed until about a week and a half later. It was the indicators I was receiving that had everything in question on what exactly my diagnosis was. In terms of sharing it, a little like Ashley, I kept it with my core group because I really wasn't sure. And ironically enough, my parents were in Florida at the time, actually. So they weren't close by. So I didn't want to trigger them. even my siblings at the time, I wasn't married. So I just wanted to process accurate information before I started to, let people know. Of course, they knew what was happening. They weren't sure what it was, but I kind of, just like Ashley was doing, just kind of dealt with it with Allison and my sisters just to get a concrete diagnosis. And then once, I received the initial diagnosis, of course, that's when I announced it again, but basically to my core family. And then, what steps were next to deal with this disease.
And also, as you told people, and of course your immediate family, and then friends, and a kind of a wider circle of folks, how did you explain it to them? How did you explain the disease and what was happening to your body? We receive many questions from patients about, how to explain these complex rare diseases to others. And and many times you look fine, you don't necessarily look that that you have anything wrong physically, and those are some of the challenges we hear about. How have you each dealt with that? Mario, do you want to go first this time?
Sure. A great question. So ironically enough, Alice, I was at the time a fitness trainer and really engaged in working out. So I was basically, in pretty decent shape at the time. So when I was, even before I was diagnosed, when these things started happening to me, it was just, I couldn't fathom exactly what it was. Getting the diagnosis and then sharing it with my family, actually compiling my information was important to me. Of course, I did what you shouldn't do. I Googled some information, but what I initially did was actually reached out to the foundation. And once I received concrete information, that's what I decided to share with my family. And, with my friends. Of course, I had nothing to hide. I'm an open book, but I just wanted to share valued information. And it's funny what you say is because one of the things I would hear all the time is, "Oh, but you look so well." They just couldn't fathom this disease. It was all the internal things that were breaking down, but on the surface, a little bit of dwindling, but they just couldn't process that this bone marrow failure disease is, affecting me the way it is, because on the surface, you look good. So I've learned to accept it. I would just kind of smile, go with it, and share my CBC counts for them to get a reality dose.
Thank you. Ashley, how about you?
Yeah, so it was a struggle. I mean, I always find that, talking with other aplastic patients, it's so similar, because what Mario is saying is so similar to me. I was probably in the best shape I've ever been right when I was diagnosed. I was eating well. I had just did a 5K with my dad's a marathon runner, so I had been running with him. And when I got the diagnosis, trying to explain it to other people was difficult, because to me, the term aplastic anemia is misleading. Usually when I say that term, most people would be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, we got low blood, you're going to get some iron, or, is your iron's low? We got low blood in our family." That was the reaction I got. And so I tried to explain that, no, it's just not my blood that's low. Technically, it's, the platelets, the white blood cells. So I really tried to explain it. And I think Mario used the term bone marrow failure. I started trying to say that much more, because that kind of pushes home the seriousness of it, as opposed to aplastic anemia. Usually when I say that term, most people are like, "Oh yeah, you got low blood." It's a lot more than low blood. So I try to say bone marrow failure. I did reach out to the foundation for information. I sent my family to the foundation. There was Facebook groups. I sent my family there so they could learn about the disease, as well as myself. So I definitely use technology.
Thank you both for those answers. And we do have a question coming in about, what were your symptoms? What made you start to seek medical care when you first experienced the symptoms, before you even knew, of course, that it was aplastic anemia? Go ahead, Ashley.
For me, it was, my vision was impaired. When I would watch TV, I would see little dots. My vision was impaired, a little bit of a headache. I had tingling of my fingers. female, my period was absolutely out of control, increased bleeding, longer bleeding time. That was the main symptom that sent me. And then the tinnitus, where you can hear your heartbeat in your ear, that's actually what sent me to the ER, because it kept happening. I was like, this is not right. So I would say that probably was the tipping point, my menstruation and the noise in my ear.
Thank you. Mario?
Yeah, for me, it was, ironically enough, getting back to the working out. I was actually doing a weekend of like sparring with some friends, and a couple days later, I noticed gigantic purple bruises on my body, and I didn't think anything of it, other than possibly my defensive skill needs to be worked on, but they were gigantic. Didn't think much of it. Ironically enough, I had a dentist appointment scheduled that day after. So it was for a routine filling. When I received the needle for the Novocaine, the bleeding just never stopped. Again, didn't think too much of it, called my dentist. He wasn't that concerned about it, just to monitor it, but it was just, those are the two things that triggered it initially. And because again, like Ashley was alluding to, you're feeling fine. I was functioning, I was participating in work. I was actually going to school at the time, doing all the things. I was actually riding my motorcycle with basically 0 platelets. Who knew? But I was functioning fine. And then unfortunately, I started to urinate blood. And that's when I thought, things are getting serious here. Of course, I knew they were getting serious. And, when I went to the ER, initially they thought possibly a ruptured spleen from the boxing. But lo and behold, a few days later, after getting looked at and treated, that's initially when I received the diagnosis of aplastic. And the same things what Ashley was saying, the little things like the amplified hearing of your heartbeat, but I didn't think much of that. It was the things happening on the surface I was super concerned with.
Thank you. And did either of you seek a second opinion or another consultation after your initial diagnosis?
I did.
Yeah. I did too.
How did you go about doing that, Mario? Did you find another hematologist, or how did you find the physician to seek the second opinion?
So I was actually scheduled to go to, so I'm based out of New Jersey. I was actually scheduled for a second opinion. I was able to get into another oncology group to have them look at me because one of our friends worked there. She was able to get me in. And actually, I'm sorry, I'll check that. That was my second opinion, was my current oncologist in New Jersey. This was prior to being enrolled in the clinical trial. It's just one of those things where you don't know what's happening. I wanted to make sure what I was being told initially was accurate information, because like Ashley could probably attest to, I've never heard of aplastic anemia. Trying to process, and not to mention this being such a rare disease, there's not many people that dealt with it. So, I wanted to make sure I was getting accurate information and someone that I was comfortable with being treated with and receiving that information.
Thank you. How about you, Ashley? Did you seek a second opinion?
Yeah, so I actually live in a very small town in Florida. And so when the initial hematologist was trying to tell me that he thinks I have this, he said, we don't actually treat it here because it's so rare. And that's when I found out it was so rare. So he sent me to UAB in Birmingham, Alabama. That is one of the closer. He said you had to go to like a big research facility, and that's one of the closer ones to me. So I did go there. They told me I would probably need ATG. They actually did not recommend me go right into ATG. They recommend I do like a 30-day waiting period, because I also had a history where I had been ingesting a lot of alcohol. So they thought it could be an alcohol related issue. And they said that, sometimes alcohol can induce you to have pancytopenia. And so I abstained from alcohol use, which I'm still abstaining. And of course, it never reversed because it wasn't from that. It's idiopathic in my case. So then I waited my 30-day waiting period, but between waiting for my 30 days, I actually thought it might be better for me to go to Tampa. Not only did I want a second opinion, but I have my mom's down there. And so I actually went to Moffitt for my second opinion. And that is where I'm currently being treated at we do our visits via Zoom right now.
Thank you. And that's so important for you to feel comfortable with your care and feel like you're getting the best care. And so I'm glad to hear that both of you pursued a second opinion and really took charge of finding the right diagnosis, and someone who has treated the disease before. Because as your doctor thankfully told you in the beginning, Ashley, that they did not see many patients like this and referred you on. That was very important that was the case. So, and you started talking some about treatments, and that's my next question here for you. What treatment side effects did you encounter, and how did you manage them? Go ahead, Mario.
Sure. Yeah. So I received horse ATG, and Alice, I also forgot to mention that the oncologist that I currently see actually was able to get me enrolled in NIH as part of a clinical trial. So I work with both groups. It's NIH heading up the protocol, but in conjunction with my local oncologist. But so it was determined I was to receive horse ATG because when I was diagnosed, a bone marrow transplant wasn't the norm I was 38 when I was diagnosed, wasn't the norm for that age group at the time. Things have changed, but yeah, the actual transfusion of the ATG went well. The side effects, and of course, it wasn't until I got home from Maryland where a few days later I developed serum sickness, bad case of it. So that, and actually I developed a mold in my chest area, aspergillosis mold. So I got the double whammy there. But the serum sickness was definitely a byproduct of the horse ATG. Wasn't pleasant, but fortunately we were able to treat both.
Ashley, how about you? Any side effects that you've been dealing with?
Yes, like Mario, I did horse ATG. I just did mine in June. I had the only side effect I had from ATG was 100. It didn't exceed 103 fever. Of course, like from cyclosporine, which I'm still on, there's a massive amount of hair growth that I'm experiencing. So to deal with the fever, in the hospital, they gave me cultures. I got a scan of my chest to make sure I did not have an infection. I did not have an infection, but they were worried about that because, it dips your WBCs maybe non-existent. I think I was very close to zero. So that was how we handled the fever. For the massive hair growth that cyclosporine provides me, I have just been getting my mustache waxed. That's how I handle it. I welcome the increased, eyebrow hair growth. I like that part, but the massive gum swelling that I've had from cyclosporine, I've dealt with that. I let my team know about that. They wanted me to be extra careful with like floss. I don't even think they told me to use a floss. They told me to use something else, but just be extra careful with that because it was painful and would cause my gums to bleed more. And then from Promacta, when I would first take that, I got a lot of headaches. That was one of the side effects I would get. So I would actually, I increased my water intake, I think, to try to help with that. I don't know if it helped. I do know that the headaches subsided once I continued. I'm in my 6th month of Promacta. So the headaches went away. It was just in the beginning. So that's how I've dealt with some of the side effects.
Thank you both. And you both mentioned, I think, and this is so important to reaffirm that you really need to let your healthcare team know when you're experiencing side effects, that they may have things that can help you that have helped other folks. And so that not to let anything go, anything unusual, any side effects really should be shared with them. And even not waiting until a next appointment, certainly to let them know sooner rather than later if you're experiencing something. And Mario, you had mentioned that you're in a clinical trial, that you were in a clinical trial, and can you talk about that and how how you found out about it and what your experience has been?
Sure. Yeah. So where I was being treated in New Jersey, there was, prior to me, there was one aplastic anemia patient there, and my oncologist felt I would be better suited to be treated at NIH. So they were able to help me pursue the clinical trial, which I was lucky enough to be accepted for. It's a great experience. I did it for 10 years, and that involved me having more regular visits in the beginning, which to be expected. And then I was lucky. I have a robust recovery, so I was able to shorten those trips. But I still see my local oncologist twice a year. So it's NIH working in conjunction with them. So everyone's in the loop with each other. It's a great experience, actually, so great, Alice, that now this was pre-COVID. So 2017 was when my 10-year, it was a 10-year clinical trial. When it was over, I was actually asked if I would re-enroll. And I felt like it was I was honored that they asked. I felt it was my obligation to do so, because I think it's important for whatever little bit my data can do to, help any patient in any way I can. I think it's important. So yeah, I re-enrolled, and because of COVID, I wasn't able to go back. I was scheduled to go back right when COVID hit. I was able to finally go back this past September. So it was great to see everyone. Unfortunately, I'm still on having a robust recovery, so things are still on the up and up. And I just think it's a great experience. I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity and have the opportunity to participate in that.
Thank you. And it was your oncologist that connected you with that trial, that made you aware of it. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And we did have another question from the audience for you, Mario. How long after you were diagnosed did you receive ATG?
Oh man, I have to go back. It wasn't immediate, but I'm gonna say within. Oh man, I wish Allison was here to give me that. But within the month and a half window, as soon as I was in NIH, which was about probably 2 to 3 weeks after I, was initially diagnosed. So within that time frame, because when I was there, we were already, on board to proceed with and because of the clinical trial, it wasn't determined what I was going to receive. At the time, I believe it was just horse and rabbit. I was selected for the horse. So I want to say within 3 weeks of diagnosis. I could be wrong, but within that time frame, Alice.
And Ashley, it sounds like it was a few months into your diagnosis. That's when you started receiving the ATG. Is that right?
Yes, I got ATG started June 13th of this year. My symptoms started April. So there was a lag time, and that's mainly due to them trying to exclude an alcohol-induced type of pancytopenia, which they said would have recovered. And once it didn't recover, I went straight into ATG at that time.
Okay, thank you. And what, for both of you also, what questions did you ask your daughter, or your doctor? I keep saying that in place of it could be a female doctor, someone's daughter, right? Ask your doctor that helped you decide on your treatment, or that it helped you understand why they were recommending the treatment that they did. Ashley, do you want to start with this one?
Yes, for me, one of the most guiding factors was how long I would kind of like be out of commission. And that's mainly to me, for me I have 2 little ones. I've got a 6-year-old and I got a 4-year-old. So they know something's going on with mommy, but they still expect mom to be a mom. I didn't want to be down for a long time. Also, I don't have any full matches. And so I do have very severe aplastic anemia, but with me having, I have a half match with my mom. So between doing a half match and doing ATG, I wanted to know, which one would I be out for the count a lot longer, of course, that would be a transplant. And so for me, I thought ATG would be the better choice. I also was very concerned about future fertility. And so that was one of my guiding questions too, about, you know, fertility after transplant versus fertility after ATG. So those two things were very important to me in guiding my treatment course.
Yeah, Alice, like I said, I was part of a clinical trial, so it was basically determined for me. But that being said, I've already researched, you know, the treatment options. So I was actually hoping I would receive the horse ATG in all fairness, because like I said, the transplant wasn't an option for me. And not to mention, out of my 3 siblings, I had no matches. So yeah, it was predetermined, and I felt comfortable with what I researched, and of course, asking the questions. I asked at NIH, so they were actually, you know, very welcoming with the information, and you know, very forthcoming with it, which I appreciated.
And we had another question submitted about the clinical trial and re-enrolling, the way you re-enrolled in the clinical trial. Was there anything different, like or was it just continuing the trial you had been on?
Yeah, it's the same. So I you know, of course, get my blood checked and then get examined by the doctor. And then the good and bad thing about it is it's a bone marrow biopsy that's involved with it. But this year's a little different, where we're going to review my data, and if everything comes back, so far no news has been good news when I've been going back. I've been very lucky, and I know that the only difference now is if my data comes back basically the same or good, I may not need to get a bone marrow biopsy until, you know, the next treatment. So the next visit, I won't need one. Moving forward, we'll determine it as we continue to gather evidence. So that's a good thing.
And do either of you have fears of relapse or a change in you know, how you're feeling in general, and how do you manage those fears? Mario?
Yeah, for sure. It's always on the, you know, it's always on the back burner. Unfortunately, that's the reality of it. You know, it's a chronic disease. I try not to forget that. Like I said, I'm lucky where, due to the first treatment of horse ATG I received, my body responded well to it. And with that, I was able to taper off the cyclosporine. My CBCs are actually within a normal range, which I never expected that to ever happen. But, you know, I still get checked twice a year with my local oncologist. Like I said, I just re-enrolled. So it's, you know, when the little things happen, not feeling well, whatever the case may be, I'm sure Ashley could attest to this, you feel something that reminds you of an effect of initially being diagnosed with this. It's always on the, you know, it's always on the back burner, like, oh my goodness, is this, that? And I try to just, so to answer your question, the second part, Alice, so I try to stay grounded. You know, I'm trying to be a realist for the most part. And of course, you know, stress is what it is, not just with this disease, life in general, work itself. So I just try to manage that as best as I can, staying as active as I can, and you know, I just keep a positive outlook. Get through it, whatever I need to get through with this. Take it day by day and moment by moment. It sounds corny, but it's true.
Thank you. Ashley, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm actually really, I guess I'm still early in my course because I just got ATG in June, and I am nowhere near normal. So my, just as background, my lowest platelet levels were, it was probably 0. It was less than 4. My lowest hemoglobin has been in the 5, and my lowest ANC was 40, 0.04. So right now, my ANC is from 700 to 1,000. My platelets are 20, which I am so grateful for. And my hemoglobin, it usually is bad actually, but just in the last 2 weeks, it got up to 8, and I haven't needed transfusions in the last few weeks, which is new for me. So I'm always concerned about, I won't use the word relapse because I don't think I'm out of the woods yet, but I'm always concerned that I'll go backwards. How do I deal with that? For me, what I've been doing lately is staying in contact with other survivors, attending a support group. That helps. just staying connected with everybody else who has had the disease, and seeing, like, hearing Mario's story is so, like, it's so enlightening, gives me hope, because I know that could be me one day. Also, my faith has massively increased, because I know that, yeah, I'm in this situation, but there could be a reason. Hopefully my voice can help somebody else. So that helps me to stay strong, because I know I got to do it for other people, because I know it's some people who don't have access to all these different doctors. They don't have the opportunity to go miles away from home. They don't have, the ability to work from home like I do. So just staying humble, like you said, staying grounded. I keep my bracelet on for my last typing cross to remind me that, at any time it could go back to that. So I definitely will say, staying grounded, staying in contact with, stuff like this helps. And then my Christianity, my faith has definitely helped me manage the stress and the worries about relapsing.
Thank you both, and I'm glad you mentioned the support groups also, because that and these are virtual support groups, of course. Now, we used to have some that were in person, and some of them may be resuming now. But that's one perhaps a good thing that came out of the pandemic, is that people became a lot more comfortable with virtual contact and communication. So, regardless of where you live or where you are. You can find a support group, certainly through us or perhaps through other medical institutions nearby. Ashley, we have a follow-up question for you also. What did your doctors say about a bone marrow transplant if you only have a half match with your mom? I know you said you chose not to do that, but that's the question. What did they say about a bone marrow transplant if you only have a half match with your mom?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because at first I thought, like, it needed to be a full match, but that's actually not the case. They said that we could actually still do a half match, but at this time, for me and my situation, how I am partially responding, that he wouldn't go through with it at this time. So I think what would change that would be if my neutrophils were to dip below 500, then we would look at the half match a little bit more closer. But yes, a half match, they actually do them. I think it's definitely less than the full matches and less desirable, but it's definitely an option, is what he told me.
Thank you. Yes, there have been so many dramatic improvements in transplant therapy and preparation that it's made it an option for many patients. Of course, it's ultimately their decision, but at least it's become more of an option. What advice would each of you have for a newly diagnosed patient? Mario, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely don't do what I did and don't Google information, find a reliable source. I always, like Ashley was alluding to, I left this part out too, Alice, was I'm involved with a lot of the support groups as well. And when we get new patients on, one of the suggestions I make, and usually the group does, is, gather your information from a reliable source. And I always direct them to the foundation, because that's important. Google can be good, but it can also be bad. It was hard for me to process the information, but you have to do it in your own way. So for me, once I received the information, the valid information that that applied to me, I needed to process it. And then, like we talked about earlier, just discussing it and dealing with it with your family and your close friends. And then, find a good support group, a good structure. And not just that, but that's also a medical team too. You have to feel comfortable with your medical team. I felt comfortable immediately with my New Jersey oncologist, and of course with my the NIH group. And that's important to me, because I feel that I can ask any question that I want to, regardless what it is. It's my question. And I need the information that pertains to me. So information gathering, but reaching out and having a solid, a core support group, and branching out with that if you need to as well. And my third takeaway from that is, like I said, just be comfortable with your medical group, your medical team. You should, at least. And we talked about it earlier. Don't be afraid to ask for a second opinion or to receive a second opinion, and to ask whatever questions matter to you.
For new newly diagnosed patients, I would definitely agree with what Maria said. Don't do what I did regarding family. Talk to your family. Let them know what is going on. One reason is because there are some types of, anemias that are genetic, like aplastic anemia is not usually, but you need to talk to your family to see if anybody else in your family has had this condition. I learned that there were people in my family who had anemia. So of course, when I went to my doctors, I was able to take that information back, but the information was delayed due to me not talking to my family beforehand. I would definitely say, talk to your family, ask questions, and don't be afraid to speak up at your appointments. If you, for example, I thought my dosage was too low based on me researching. I researched way too much, looking up, Googling stuff. I thought my dosage was too low. And so I'm usually mild-mannered and quiet, but I brought this up to my team. I was like, hey, I've done some research, and my dose, my cyclosporine dose, I think is too low. Can we bump it up? And they were like, yeah. So I say that to say, don't think that what you're saying is stupid. Don't think you're uninformed, because aplastic anemia patients, they know aplastic anemia. There's probably nothing nobody else can tell you, because when my doctors are telling me stuff in my head, I'm like, yeah, I already read that. There's usually nothing they can tell me that I don't already know. And that's from talking to you guys, researching too much. I would also say, find something that makes you happy to continue to do that, because early in the process, there's a lot of doom and gloom. Just a bunch of feelings of, will I ever get better? Will I ever be normal? And I don't even strive for normalcy anymore. I just strive for transfusion independence. So just don't try to be normal. Take breaks, get help. If you're into faith, please rely on your faith. That has helped me a lot. And just remember to always share your experiences with others, because what keeps me hopeful and what has helped me so much is hearing from other people like Mario and seeing posts. You'll probably never know this, but your post on Facebook or your post on Twitter about your condition, it has helped somebody, because that's exactly how I learned about the disease. I would go on Twitter and Facebook and type in the word aplastic anemia, and if somebody had said that word, I would read what they said and go to their page and read about them. So just know you are helping other people. Please share the word.
Thank you, Ashley. And there's a follow-up. This is actually for both of you. How did you go about getting into the support groups that you're talking about?
Oh, for me, like I said, what I did when I first got diagnosed is I literally went on Twitter. I did quotation mark. I was diagnosed with aplastic anemia, quotation mark. And anybody who had said that word or that phrase, it popped up their post. Every single person who said that, I sent them a direct message. And I said, look, I got something similar going on. I think it's this. And that's how the conversation started. They would say, oh yeah, I had it, and this is what I did. And they would say, contact this person. They know about it more too. And that's how I found the aplastic anemia support group. Actually, that one was from a YouTube. I did that same thing on YouTube and found a guy giving a podcast. He had just been diagnosed, and he mentioned, I left him a comment, and he reached out to me and told me about the group. And I told somebody else about the group, just word of mouth. So that's how I found my aplastic anemia group.
Thank you. How about you, Mario?
Yeah, for me, I'm old school, Alice. So I was on the Marrow forums originally, and like Ashley was alluding to, some social media. But then my primary resource for support groups initially was the conferences we would hold in person. We'd get together with other patients, and that was valuable to me. And then I'm extremely lucky where in New Jersey, one of our friends here, Linda Rothstein, decided to head up a support group. And this is, I want to say 2012, she started it. So we used to meet in New Brunswick, which was convenient for me. And it was in person. And we still have them going to this day. And like you said, Alice, to me, one of the positives of the pandemic was the ability to bring, friends with compromised immune systems to attend these support group sessions now via virtually. We were trying a little bit of that in the early days, little teleconferencing, but finding the silver lining with the pandemic is that because we have patients on we try to accommodate. So we have patients on our Eastern time zone joining from everywhere. We've had some internationally joining. So I think it's incredibly valuable. I join whenever I can, and just try to share my story and listen to some of the patients, because actually, like you were saying, we've all been there from day one. You hit day one and processing information and trying to find not just, family and friends are amazing, but unless you really talk to someone who understands, without batting an eyelash, what aplastic anemia, what MDS is, whatever these bone marrow failure diseases are, I think that's incredibly valuable. The first conference I attended was in DC, and just being on an elevator with someone who had aplastic anemia, just being able to talk to them right from the get-go about aplastic anemia without having to explain what it is. And like what Ashley was saying, no, not that anemia, no, not this, like just get into it, talk about numbers, experiences. That was another one of my first support group sessions, was the one-on-one at a conference, which was awesome. So like I said, I think they're incredibly valuable. Thank you again for conducting them.
Thank you. And in addition to what both of you said, and you both said also that you found some through the foundation or through social media, anyone can contact us at AAMDSIF. We do have support groups listed on our website, but you can also call our helpline or send us a message and we can help you find one if you're having difficulty. Thankfully, more and more virtual ones have become available since the pandemic. So you should certainly be able to find one. And we had another question from the audience asking if caregivers can be part of the support group. And in either of yours, are there caregivers? I know there are separate caregiver support groups that we're aware of, but do either of you have caregivers participate in your support groups that you're part of?
I think there is one person in my support group who she joins from time to time. She does not have aplastic anemia, but she is a caregiver. And actually we have actually two more, now that I think of it, whose children have aplastic anemia. So their parents are their caregivers and they join. My husband is never on camera, but he is always in the business, sitting right beside me, listening and giving his opinion. So yes, the caregivers are involved.
Yeah, same with us, Alice. Especially when we were more in person, we definitely had, caregivers in attendance there, but now virtually we have caregivers in session. Like Ashley was saying, sometimes they don't get to go on camera, which is good. But yeah, for sure, Allison was involved from the get-go. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's good to have them, with the groups, and like you alluded to, Alice, having their own support session, because being a caregiver, that's a job in itself, and it's kudos to them and everyone that does that.
And so many times what we hear from caregivers is that, oh, no, the emphasis is on the patient and that's my job, or, I don't want anyone to think it's a burden, but it is really important for caregivers to take care of themselves as well, because then they can better support the patients that they're caring for. And one more question here. We're talking about support groups, and this lends itself to that. Aside from the support groups, have you sought support from outside your family, with a therapist or any other type of support that perhaps your medical professionals provided or suggested?
I have not seen a therapist. I did consider it, but I have not at this point. It's not out of consideration, but I have not.
Yeah, same with me. I have a really good support structure, and I'm also really vocal with this. So the support groups are perfect for me. I can, talk to anyone about it. I'll share anything. It's an open book. But I am not in objection to it. By all means, if I felt that I needed it, outside of the scope of what I need, by all means, I would seek it out.
And I should add here too, you both mentioned social media, existing social media, and those are wonderful outlets and opportunities to share. And even if you don't want to share yourself, you can still be reading. As you said, Ashley, you can read other posts and information that people are sharing. And at AMDSIF, we just started also another alternative. And again, there are many options, and it's up to what anybody wants to do personally. But this is through a website called inspire.com, and we've started communities dedicated to each of our disease areas. So there's an MDS community and a PNH community and an aplastic anemia community, and it's very similar to other types of social media, but it's you join on. In fact, Mario, it's kind of the Marrow Forums 2.0. That will eventually be migrating the Marrow Forums participants, but this is another platform and has a few other features that we'll be able to offer. So it's kind of the next generation of the original Marrow Forums that became a part of several years ago. But we're looking to expand that option. So there are lots of options for people to seek support out, beyond their immediate family. And again, if anyone has any questions, they can always contact us at AAMDS. I think that's all the questions that I see coming in. And do either of you have any closing thoughts to share before we finish?
I'll say just thank you for the opportunity. I learned so much from Mario. I loved hearing the questions. And if I could just leave with any parting advice, I would say that, be confident, be positive about the future. There are a lot of treatment options. So, just from what Mario was saying, when he was first diagnosed, what they were not doing then, if you look now, what they are doing, so who knows in 20 years what they will be doing. Just stay in the race. Every time I went to the hematologist for my checkups early in my disease, they would tell me, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And that is true. Just stay in for the long haul, be faithful, and just remember that we can do this. And there are people who have done this and they are successful, whether it be through transplant, ATG, cyclosporin, all types of medications. We can do it.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off that. Well said. For sure, stay positive, stay the course. That's one of my takeaways. When I was diagnosed and, things were pretty bleak, well said, Ashley. I knew it was a marathon. I knew nothing was going to be one and done. I had the right information. I had the best support team. So it was my willingness to just stay in the fight, do whatever it is I needed to do, whatever that was. But yeah, you have to stay positive because, some of those days are pretty dark. And, at the moment, it just seems like you're never going to get through this. It's, regardless what it is you're feeling at the time, you got to hold on to the fact that, this is a process. And here it is. Ashley said it before I said it. When we were first diagnosed, our platelets were basically zero. 20,000, I thought that was going to be, if I was lucky, I thought that was going to be the best that I was ever going to be. And I was completely ecstatic with that. So, when we're on a support group and everyone's exchanging information and even treatment options, 15 years ago, treatment options were different than what they are now. I process all this information. So when I attend the conferences and when I attend the webinars and when I'm on the support groups, I hear of all these new treatments and these new options. I'm floored by it. So, it can only get better. if you're unfortunately diagnosed with the disease, but it's not a death sentence, it's just something you have to power through like anything else. And like Ashley was saying, you just look for the light at the end. It's there, it may not be tomorrow, and stay the course. And thank you again for having me as well.
Thank you both so much for sharing your time and your experience with us, and some of our audience has expressed their thanks as well. So this was really meaningful and will help a lot of folks who are encountering aplastic anemia, and caregivers and family members. So thank you again very much. If you would like to watch this webinar again at a later time, it will be available on our website within a few business days. If we were not able to answer your question today, you can send it to us at any time in 3 ways. You can send an email to help@aamds.org. You can call the AAMDSIF helpline at 800-747-2820, extension 2, or you can submit a question on our Facebook page. On behalf of the Aplastic Anemia and MDS International Foundation, thank you for joining us today and for making us your resource of choice for information on bone marrow failure diseases. The AAMDSIF Medical Advisory Board and team are here to help you and your family, as we have for the past 39 years. This concludes today's program.